All right, joined now by Brandon Duenas of Bright Side of the Sun and Locked On Suns, covering the Phoenix Suns here for us at the Alley Oop. Brandon, this has been an interesting year, a year full of twists and turns for the Phoenix Suns. We just got our most recent one on, I think it was Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken. Just oh no, it was Tuesday actually. It was Tuesday.
Tuesday, yeah.
Massive comeback against the Kings. Tell us more about just what the hell happened in that game.
Yeah, it was very much needed. That's for sure. It was. It just kind of felt like another one of those letdowns where the Suns are playing a good team. They're fully healthy for the most part. Bol was out, so obviously can't say fully healthy without.
Can't say fully healthy without Bol.
Exactly, but no, like it was a game that you're expecting them to get up for, and it was just kind of a slow start. And here we go again, down by 22 in the fourth, and then all of a sudden just this fire comes out of nowhere, it seems like, and they really believed they could win the game, and just kind of possession by possession they got stops, and those stops led to easy buckets in transition, and it snowballed into something that hasn't happened since the bubble. I believe it was like 1,244 games in a row of like
Jeez.
a team trailing by 20 or more in the fourth. That was like it was like 0 and 1,000 something. So don't quote me on the exact number, but it was a lot of losses that they kind of overcame there. And I think ESPN projections had it at like 99.9% chance for the Kings to win at one point. So it was definitely a improbable win, but it's one of those wins that I feel like could definitely shift the course of the season. Health is the main thing with this team, right? Like if that's kind of been the issue all year. Now that we have these guys and they showed they could win a gritty game like that, I think it's really encouraging for just the trajectory of the rest of the season.
Of course. I mean, that's one of those ones that galvanizes a team. It's one of those ones where you don't know, like you can kind of throw out the previous games out the window in a lot of ways, just because if you see a team come together in that way, play at that level, then you as a team can understand, okay, we can find that gear every now and then. It doesn't have to be all the time, and you got to be more consistent, obviously, but the consistency has kind of shifted back in a positive way with Bradley Beal. He's only played 16 games so far this season, but he's played the last 10 in a row, and the Suns are 7-3 in their last 10. 11th in net rating, 9th in offense, 15th in defense. Just a very, very impressive turnaround from, I think a lot of people saw this team as like, they're kind of 500. They're kind of average for at least a little bit, and it seems like they're trending in the positive direction.
Yeah, 100%. I think it was just an injection of life to a team that was pretty lifeless. And it's just kind of funny that 22-point comeback happened in the fourth quarter, just considering this season, the fourth quarter, the Suns have been the worst in the NBA, like by far. So that was just kind of came out of nowhere. But I think Beal's returns definitely had obviously a positive impact. There's been a couple hiccups here and there, some games I thought they should have won with him that they lost, especially that Memphis game. But overall, yeah, they've won 8 of their last 11. And I think they're starting to just kind of figure out how to play off each other, because their rotation's just been so inconsistent this season. So now the guys are in the roles that they're originally supposed to be in, and Grayson Allen's playing like prime Michael Jordan. It's just it feels like things are starting to fall into place a little bit. But yeah, having Beal out there has definitely been a very good just wake up call, I would say, to a team that just kind of needs something to get them going. So it's been encouraging.
Beal's been great. We know what KD is. We know what Devin Booker is. Those guys, I have zero questions about those guys and what they're going to bring in a regular season and playoff environment. It's not something I'm worried about in any way, shape, or form. What we were worried about was the rest of the guys. And when you add a guy like Bradley Beal, you don't know what that's going to look like for the team. You don't know how Jusuf Nurkic or Grayson Allen or guys like that are going to fit in. Turns out they fit in pretty well. And Grayson Allen shooting 48% from three. Jusuf Nurkic ranks 22nd in defensive EPM. Like, these guys are valuable, and they're role players that are contributing in a very positive way. It just takes the entire team to kind of really, like, when everybody gets healthy, you can start to see the team shining through a little bit. So which of those guys do you think has been more valuable to the Suns so far between Allen and Nurkic?
I would say Allen. I mean, he's 50, 40, 90. Like, that's just, he's the only player in the league right now that is in that club, which I thought was pretty remarkable. So he's kind of been who he's always been, but just shooting the absolute like just shooting lights out. I was about to drop an F-bomb, but I'll keep it PG here. But he's shooting lights out right now.
Nearly,
So it's
nearly 50-50, 90, if we're being honest. Like, it's crazy.
yeah. No, it's nuts. So he like at that man in 3-point contest. He's been, I don't know where they'd be without him this season, honestly. Especially those just losing Beal and like Booker for some games. Durant, he's just been that steady presence offensively, and he's been a great role player. So I think he's really been a pleasant surprise. And then Nurkic has definitely had his moments, and defensively, there's some matchups where I think Vogel's starting to do a better job of reading when it's kind of his night and when it's not. And that Kings game, he was on the bench for that comeback. They went small, and the Kings just couldn't score on the Suns. And so it's just, I think it's just a matter of Vogel figuring out what's going to work and what's not. And there's a lot of experimenting that was not going great, not just with Nurkic, just in general. And now it seems like they're slowly starting to figure out when to push those buttons, which is, it's going to come with anytime you have an entire, as much turnover as the Suns roster has had, like there's going to be those growing pains. So feels like they're slowly but surely figuring it out. And as I say this now, against the Pelicans, they'll probably lose by 15, and their rotation will be all over the place. But
Sure.
that's how the season's gone. But
as it does, you know.
Yeah, yeah. The role players, they've definitely stepped up and have looked impressive, and have done a nice job of stepping up when they need to, and also taking a step back and letting the big three do their thing as well.
So you mentioned Nurkic being on the bench for that stretch. I've seen some mentions of a death lineup. I've seen some mentions of a group that you can go to if you're the Suns. And so tell me about the group. Tell me what it is and why it works.
Yeah, so it seems like Durant at the 5, especially against in that Kings game. Sabonis is really struggling to because he's not going to dribble around Durant, and Durant was contesting his shots, kind of applying pressure up top, where Sabonis is going to dissect you, as a playmaker. And I thought that he did a good job of disrupting that, and the Kings just really were stagnant. And you had Gordon and Beal along with Allen, Durant, and Booker, and so what you have is just a 5-out offense where you want to double Booker or Durant. Like, good luck. You're going to leave someone that's shooting nearly 40% from 3, like wide open. Obviously, Beal and Gordon aren't shooting as lights out as like the numbers indicate. But if you give those guys a wide open shot, like that's a good possession for the Suns. So offensively, I think they have very few minutes together, like that group specifically. But especially after seeing what they just did, like I think that's something we're going to see a lot more should they stay healthy. And if they can continue to, if they bring it on the defensive end, if that group does, then they're going to be a real problem. I don't know how consistent that's going to be, or if that's going to be the norm, like what happened against the Kings. But the way they played, just from an intensity perspective, was unlike anything we've seen from the Suns all year long. So that was encouraging. And there's no you could hunt Eric Gordon or Booker if you want, but those guys are still pretty strong for their size. So there's not really like a weak link in terms of like a smaller, like a Chris Paul, or like someone that's just easy to post up on mismatches. So I think their versatility on that end kind of helped as well. They're not huge, but they're also not extremely small. So it's kind of an interesting balance.
Interesting balance for sure. I'm trying to think about, man, who would Denver put Jokic on in that particular group would be a fascinating thought experiment. I know Durant would guard Jokic in that circumstance, but obviously neither of those teams. That's a 175 offensive rating both ways, but it would be a fascinating experiment to try that for 6 minutes and see what the hell happened. No, it's been good to see, and then this is a team that has always kind of prided itself on being successful on the offensive end, building around Booker and Durant. You add a guy like Beal, you add Grayson Allen, you add Eric Gordon, and nobody thought that they would be 15th in defense. You and I were talking about, hey, if they get into the top 20, then that's a miracle of sorts. I'm curious as to why you think they got to that place, and if it's just like guys performing above their station, or is there something that Frank Vogel's doing?
I think you got to give Vogel some credit there. I think it's slowly starting to turn into where everyone's buying in, and obviously just the health is a huge factor as well. Just it seems like the rotation's settling a little bit, and they're kind of defending as a team. It's not really they don't have a ton of point of attack defenders. They don't have guys that are outside of Josh Okogie that are super disruptive and picking up 94 feet, or that's their identity. But they have a few guys that just that'll get after you, and then the rest of the team just feels like they're on the same page. And I think that's how they're gonna. They're not going to be world beaters defensively. We all know this, but if you could just string together stops and get them timely stops and use that to, you know, kind of put a little jolt in the offense, then I think that's where they could really go on some crazy runs like we just saw in that Kings game, where they just kind of bury you or make a comeback. But if it's already a close game, or if they're leading by a couple points and they go on one of those runs, and that could be like reminiscent of those Warrior death lineup teams that we saw with just all the shooting, and it just felt like it was just like a 12-0 run in like a minute, and you're just like, what just happened? So I feel like they still have that kind of potential offensively, but it's just a matter of it actually happening and more than once. So
Sure.
I'm a little skeptical there, but I still think it is definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah, it is interesting that, I mean, as awesome as we both thought that the offense would be, that it's only ninth. Offense is up
Yeah.
around the entire league, though, so it's really hard for me to just say, oh yeah, they're the ninth ranked offensive team, as if that wouldn't be the best offense from last year. So it's interesting to kind of like sort of have that knowledge and understand, look, this is
Yeah.
going to be and nobody can defend anybody right now, and the best teams are the ones that can defend for pockets of time. And this team does feel like, hey, you got a bunch of veterans on the squad. You got guys that understand how to play defense. It's just about picking and choosing the moments to. And in the playoffs, that might get a little bit more difficult to do it for a full 48, but you don't even really have to do it for the full 48 in the playoffs. You just got to do it for 36 and then survive for the other 12. So it'll be interesting to see. Do you feel more or less comfortable in the championship vision since the beginning of the year, knowing what you know now after this entire stretch?
Depends which week you ask me, but now that's here, like I'm feeling a little more optimistic than I was
Nice.
a week ago, but definitely not the start of the season. I was a lot higher on this team. I thought they had, I thought they were going to come in and obviously have some of those growing pains, like every team does with, like a new big three, or all the roster turnover, new coaching staff. Like, so I was expecting a little bit of a slow start, but not anything like this. I still do think the West runs through Denver and a healthy Clippers team. Like, all due respect to the Timberwolves and Thunder, like they're playing great, but I think the Suns, they're just one of those teams that they could. I think they could beat anyone in any series if they're hot, but I could also see that in the other direction as well. So it's really going to be about matchups, health, and just who's hot at the right time. That's really what it comes down to. So my opinion hasn't really changed. I still think the West is wide open in terms of there's multiple teams that can come out, but there's just so many factors that go into it. So that's my boring answer, but I think this is going to be one of the greatest playoffs in the Western Conference in a long time. I think just because of the parity, and then also just some of the firepower from top to bottom. Like some of those lower seeds, you're not going to want to see in round one. And even if you have home court, it's just like, we worked our ass off all season long to get this, and this is how we have to play the like, I don't know, the Suns or the Clippers or whoever. It's just, that'll be an interesting dynamic to follow.
It's just how the cookie crumbles in the Western Conference, people. We understand this. It's been like this for decades and decades, and this is just same shit, different year. So it's understandable, but no, it's going to be fascinating to see how it breaks down. The Nuggets were the lucky team to come out of it last year, and in what was finally a down year for the West. But now every team feels like they're really loading up, and the trade deadline will be another opportunity for everybody too. Yep. I know the Suns don't really have a ton of resources. What can they do, and what do they need?
So I think right now everyone points to a point guard, and I'm not really on that train. Like, let's take the ball out of our star players' hands more. Like, no, I think the big three, the numbers suggest it's working in terms of when those three are on the court. It's been limited minutes, but they've been doing pretty well. Like, their net rating's awesome. It doesn't matter who you surround them with in terms of these numbers early on, but I think come playoff time, it's going to be important to have some more 3-and-D wings with a little more size that can guard multiple positions. Someone like Royce O'Neal, Royce O'Neal's name popped up on Bobby Marks's episode, like previewing the Suns. So someone in that mold that can kind of have a low usage, low maintenance offensively, but he can hit open shots, hopefully, and just defend and play tough. So I think adding someone like that, and then I think another center is going to be huge. Just someone that can protect the rim, give him a different look. Obviously, you can play Durant at the 5. You can mess around with some bull lineups. He looked awesome before that injury. I'm not going to say he's a sure like fire rotation player in the playoffs or anything, but something interesting there. But I think just adding another big to spell Nurkic, you just need 6 more fouls at the center position. That's really what it comes down to, especially with how many great bigs there are on the West. So I think, yeah, just adding a third center that can play for, a Bismack Biyombo, possibly reunion there, but and then another 3-and-D wing. They can't really do much, but they do have 4 second-round picks they can deal. They have Nasir Little's contract. He's a very team-friendly contract as well, and he's still young enough to where there's teams that could have some interest there. But again, you're not going to be, unless you're trading Grayson Allen or Nurkic, like you can't really make any move that's going to really shake the league up. But just improving on the edges.
Yeah, no, it has to be. Like, you know what the formula is going to be. The top 6 are pretty much set in stone. You've got Booker, Beal, Eric Gordon, Grayson Allen, Kevin Durant, and Jusuf Nurkic. Like it's going to be the top 6, and figuring out who else can play is going to be the goal for the rest of the season. And maybe that's somebody that you trade for. But we will see what happens. I'm looking forward to it. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Nothing now. I did see a very interesting stat about the Suns' defensive rating with, I think it was Nurkic, Gordon, Booker, Durant, and Allen was like the highest defensive rating unit in the league. And that just blew my mind. Like I think it was like minimum 100 minutes played together, and they played like 147 minutes together. So it's still a pretty small sample, but I thought like it doesn't feel real. Like I'll need to go check those numbers because
it doesn't feel real. That's for sure.
Yeah. StatMuse tweeted that out. But so that lineup combo, there might be something there. I don't know. That was just like an interesting little like nugget I found that maybe if you're not following the Suns, that slipped through your Twitter feed or X feed, whatever you want to call it these days. But yeah, that was kind of the last departing thoughts. Is I'm going to need to like go back and rewatch those minutes because I'm just still shook by that.
The new death lineup in Suns Twitter. Going to be very fascinating to see. I'm looking forward to watching it all with you. He is Brandon Duenas of Locked On Suns and Bright Side of the Sun. Really appreciate you stopping by. Let's chat again in about 6 weeks, all right?
Sounds good. Thanks, Ryan.